Hey, what's up everybody? It's Joe from Gadgetry Tech, and today we're going to talk about a new IEM from Meze Audio. This is the Alba, which is a Romanian word for first light because they kind of think it's your first exposure to the Meze house sound. I think, Gateway Drug didn't do as well with the focus groups, so Alba makes a lot more sense. This is a single dynamic driver. It is a 32 ohm impedance, which means it's pretty versatile as far as what you can plug it into. Because it's a single DD, it's not really affected as much by output impedance either. But even if you cared about that, one thing that's super exciting is this comes with a dongle, a really nice dongle that even illuminates. I'll show you that in a moment, but for 160 bucks, you get a nice case. You get this little leather pouch here. You actually get 8 ear tips instead of 6. Usually you get like small, medium, large. This one's small, medium, large, and extra large, depending on your ear shape. They're relatively short, and we'll get into ergonomics. You also get this really nice cable. Now this is SFC cable, which is silver plated, or SPC cable, sorry, silver plated copper. Because it's a translucent jacket design, you can see inside. I really like this cable, crazy lightweight, very flexible, not really too bad of a memory effect considering the weight and the braid. So that kind of ties into the comfort thing. Now, before I get any further, I do want to disclose this was sent to me for review by Meze Audio. Won't affect what I say about it. This is going to be a fairly positive review though. I do want to be honest and upfront. That's not because it was sent to me for review. I think as more people use this, hopefully they have the same experiences, but I like a lot of things about it. I will do my best to point out pros and cons throughout the video, and I will have chapters below in case you only care about a certain topic. Now, continuing with ergonomics and design, this is similar to the Aardvar. It's the same general port tuning, but instead of a stainless steel body, they went with a zinc and anodized aluminum shell. I can't be the only one that sees a turbocharger when you look at it though. I mean, I used to soup up cars and I'm just getting flashbacks of my T3, T4 hybrid turbo days. In addition to the material change, they also switched to a 2-pin connection, which I'm really excited about because I can use my Antlion Kimura mic if I want to attach a boom mic to this. 2-pin connections are just a little bit more ubiquitous nowadays. You kind of find a lot of cable options out there, and it's more likely if you have several IEMs that you have a good 2-pin cable you like. So if for any reason you don't like this one, it makes it easier to swap. As far as the overall design and fitment goes, this thing is so small. It's got a little bit of weight to it from the metal body, but ergonomically, it is just amazing in ear. This is honestly one of the most comfortable IEMs I've worn. Not only is the shape very good for my particular ear and where it puts the wire, but because there's such a small shell, I can actually wear these in bed for a little bit. I don't know if you or any of you out there watching this have ever plugged in IEMs and you lay down on a pillow because you're watching some content late at night. Maybe you don't want to disturb your significant other or something. But most IEMs have a larger shell than this, and the result of that is if you're laying on your side but you still want to wear IEMs, it becomes very uncomfortable very quickly, and this small shell alone is going to be a big selling point for people. It happens to just fit me well, so this is more of a personal thing. I used the large tip, not the extra large, and that was the best one for my particular ears. Usually I have to wear a slightly larger tip on the right side than my left in order to get a seal. The extra large were too big and the mediums were too small, so the large ended up working fine on both ears in this particular case. Now I want to show you the bore size because that's obviously very important with an IEM. That's basically like a hard point of how small the tip can possibly be in your ear, and if the bore is too large, that can cause some discomfort regardless of what tip you use. So let me zero this out here. I'm going to measure the inside of the bore, basically below the lip, and then I'll measure the lip itself. We have 5.2 basically on the inner part of the bore. If I go to the larger part where the lip is, I'm at 6 millimeters. So that lip's going to help keep the tips snug in place, but that is a pretty small bore size. And when you factor in the overall shell dimensions, design, and the way it's shaped, it just leads to stellar comfort. All the comfort is great, but it won't matter as much if the sound quality isn't that good, or at least close to your ideal target. So I want to talk about sound quality from an objective standpoint first and focus on the measurements. Then I'll talk about how I perceive it, what I like or dislike about it. So I use an IEC 711 coupler clone, which simulates an ear canal connected to an XLR interface, and then I measure it on my computer and upload it to SquigLink. And when you look at the measurements of the Alba, there is a pretty familiar and generally safe sound signature of it. Now, when you look at the bass region, It's close to Harman, but there is more warmth, which is kind of typical with the Meze sound. They usually boost, the 100 to 200 hertz area, and including headphones like the 99 Classic, which is significantly boosted. But even when you look at the Empyreans or the Lyric 2 that came out, or the Elite, there's always a touch more warmth in this area. So I could see why they wanted to call it the Alba, because they're trying to kind of mimic some of that house sound warmth, even on an affordable IEM. The mid-range is safe as well. There's no weird scoops, there's no weird peaks, nothing comes across as shouty, and yeah, you see a slight emphasis at 1 to 1.5K, but that's literally just compared to the Harman curve. You're talking less than 1 dB. It really doesn't mean anything, that's just how my rig is measuring it, but it's a pretty safe tune, and it also doesn't peak too high either. When you look at the 2 to 4K area, and as you approach 4K, it's kind of like your pinna gain area, which is what your pinna will typically boost normally. On an IEM, you may not want the same sound signature because you're bypassing that. And I think, again, this is a little bit more forward than some other IEMs I've reviewed recently. I'll compare to a couple others, but again, a generally safe tune. It sounds fairly resolving. Nothing comes across as overly colored or modified in like a negative way. You just have that touch of warmth. Now, what will stand out to some people is, again, kind of like the Meze sound, and this is more in line with the Lyric 2. What it does is it has a little bit more tame upper mids now, but you still have emphasized upper treble. So like the 15,000 hertz and up, you can see this area here is kind of lifted, at least on my rig. That peak is going to vary greatly on your particular ear canal, how far it's put in and out. But there is definitely some sparkle on the top end, and I don't want to focus too much on the measurements of explaining it, but it definitely comes across as a warmer sounding IEM. Vocals have a great presence to it without any weird nasaliness to it. There's no glare or obnoxious issues with the sound for the most part. The only thing that stands out that could be negative to some people is the stronger upper treble extension. Now, that does help create a sense of space and airiness and openness, which is kind of nice. And for people who are starting to lose sensitivity to those higher frequencies, you may actually like this. It's going to bring some of that space that you might find other products lacking. So I want to compare these to a few IEMs that I like, and then I'll talk about them subjectively. The EM6L has been one of my favorite sub $200 IEMs, and you can see the sound signature is extremely close, like neck and neck with this. Now, when I scroll down, you can see that I have the DAC measurement. I do want to turn that on real quick. The DAC does not change the frequency response. They're not using this to modify the sound. It's just there to give you a better option than plugging directly into a headphone jack of a desktop, for example. So going back to the EM6L, I'm going to change the color here. You can see that even if I try to make it stand out, they have a very similar sound signature. You just don't have that upper sparkle that the Alba does. And the EM6L might come across as, I guess, slightly recessed in the vocal region in comparison, but they have very similar warmth and resolution. I think the EM6L is slightly more resolving at higher volumes, but the general tonality of it, when you have a BA system like the EM6L, the balanced armature driver is doing your upper frequencies, you can tell that the timbre is just slightly different. They have a different sound characteristic to them. And the Alba being a dynamic driver only, to me comes across as a little bit more natural sounding on the music side. So if you're using this for a lot of mixed listening, compared to the EM6L, even though they measure the same, I would prefer the Alba. Now, I talked about the SimGot SuperMix 4 in the past. I've covered it on the channel, and the SuperMix 4 has a little bit more sub-bass extension, but even though this doesn't look to be much higher, I can tell you the SuperMix 4 sounds a bit more sparkly than this. It's much more emphasized and bright sounding, I think, because it's using the planar and the piezoelectric tweeters. They just have a more metallic ringing type sound to them. And some people who are craving the ultimate resolution and detail at $150, then yeah, you might want the SuperMix, but I could not really listen to the SuperMix without EQing that treble down. It was just too much for me. Another popular IEM in this price range is the Truth Air Nova, which is very much a Harman-tuned IEM. And the end result of the Nova, the bass is deep sounding only because the mid bass is kind of lacking. It's a very clean, neutral sounding bass, and then you can see that there's more forwardness as you approach 3000 hertz. It sounds like a crispier, drier presentation. I guess with some music like EDM, you might like something like the Nova a little bit more. And when you have the dynamic plus BA drivers, again, if you're trying to listen to it at higher volumes, I feel like the Nova is going to handle detail retrieval just a little bit better. But for the volumes I typically listen to, it's not so much an issue. Typically with IEMs, I prefer a little bit more warmth. That's why I've leaned towards things like the EM6L or the Zigat Arete that came out recently. That touch of warmth helps make them sound a little bit more full and lush, and it really helps with rock music or certain genres that benefit from that. Getting into the fun stuff, I want to talk about sound quality in 3 buckets, if you will. We're going to talk about music, gaming, and movie listening because frankly, when you have something this versatile in terms of shape and comfort, I tend to use it for a lot of different content consumption. So I want to start with music, and one thing I really like about the Alba is the fact that it's a single DD with a warmer sound signature. To me, I just really enjoy it more for rock music. It's forward enough in the upper frequencies where vocals and the upper frequencies of guitars and other string instruments still come forward, but that extra warmth down low carries some of the energy and emotion from rock music, where a lot of IEMs, such as the Nova, because they're a little bit more U-shape or V-shape, the bass is cleaner, but rock doesn't sound as good to me. You don't have, like, when you listen to larger speakers in a room and you're playing rock, you get more of that visceral feeling. IEMs almost never deliver that. They just can't. And when you have a more of a cleaner bass presentation, to me, that makes that part even worse. So if you're a big EDM and hip hop person, I mentioned this in the measurements, then yeah, something like the Nova is going to be fine. But for mixed consumption, especially rock and especially vocal heavy tracks, I really love the Alba's tuning. That warmth comes through just almost perfectly for me in this price. Love the tuning on it, and because it's a single DD, I don't have some of that same dryness or plasticiness, I guess. Balanced armatures have their own unique timbre characteristics to it, and depending on how they're tuned, some will come across more dry than others. So this just has a warmer, comfier sound, but it's still resolving enough. I don't think it's as resolving as the Super Mix, which doesn't have tips right now because I roll tips a lot. I think the EM6L, when pushed higher, is a little bit more resolving as well. In fact, most of these at higher volumes seem to extract the subtle details just a little bit more on bass-heavy tracks. That's part of the single dynamic driver limitation. But at moderate volumes, what I typically listen to it at, I like the tonality more on the Alba. I would prefer the Alba over everything here, with the Arete having its own unique characteristics on the gaming side. So I think it really depends on what kind of genres you listen to. If you're chasing the utmost detail, then yeah, maybe stick to a hybrid setup, but these are still quite resolving, and honestly, music sounds more natural to me, and that's much more enjoyable. Now, when it comes to gaming performance, this is a mixed bag, and there's 2 ways to look at it. You have the sound signature, and then you have comfort, because if you're gaming, a lot of people play for extended periods of time. This is very immersive. That extra warmth just sounds amazing in single story games and stuff that is a little bit more casual. The driver matching on my particular unit is excellent, so imaging is quite nice as well. The only time where these struggles, if you have really complex bass heavy scenes and you're trying to, track footsteps, then purely on the FPS side, I will lean towards the Syngot EM6L, or if you want to spend a little bit more, get the Zigat and Fresh Reviews Arete. Those are just a little bit better at layering subtle details. But for the comfort side, the Albas are still in a league of their own. Now, if you want to play super competitive and you're using something like the Alba, just do some custom EQ, take some of the bass down and clean that up, and that'll let the dynamic driver do its best at every other area that you care about if you're chasing more of the detail side. The higher upper frequencies does help with soundstage and width, so if you still want the environments to feel kind of vast and wide, these don't really sound too congested. And because they're not too strong in the 8K area, when you're playing certain games that have sharper sounds like Call of Duty firing a gun, Apex with the shield cracks, these are recessed in the areas that cause listening fatigue in gaming. So even without EQ, I find them very enjoyable for long periods of time. Now, another benefit of the comfort, I talked about being in bed and listening to these and using them. Usually I have to use some wireless earbuds that are smaller. They don't sound good, but it's one of the few that I can actually lay in bed with comfort-wise, and that's changed with the Alba, and these sound better. So for music, I watched Dune 2 on these because I love the movie and I've watched it several times now. These sounded fantastic with Dune. The vocals are forward. It's very easy to pick up dialogue, even in high action scenes. The warmth of bass just sounds so good on I'm telling you, the listening experience with these for movie consumption is great. The tonality's a lot of fun, and I think the warmth helps kind of bring you into the movie more. But again, I don't like punishing higher frequencies either. So when you have something where there's vocals and then there's an explosion, I don't want those to cause me to have to turn it down because it's just overpowering the rest. And I'm pleased to say that the Albas don't have that issue. So I think that kind of wraps up the video. Now, I'm really passionate about this stuff because I listen to music all the time. I work from home for my day job. This YouTube channel is kind of like a side hobby of mine. But I just love discovering new stuff. And the Alba's probably been one of my favorite sub $200 IEMs I've ever owned. The SIMGOT EM6L has been my favorite I've ever used under $200 for gaming. And the Alba is taking the throne for best overall in terms of you don't know what you need, but you want something better and also comfortable. The Alba is just an exceptional value. Now, I talked about the DAC. This is a huge hidden benefit, to be honest, because this is a really good DAC. It even looks really nice. You know, if I plug this in to a tablet, this is an Android tablet. Let me turn it on. You can kind of see it. It's going to be a little bit subtle, but you can kind of see that it lights up a little bit. It's going to be a little bit harder to see on my lighting, but I do like that it lights up. I think it's clean and it kind of continues the flow of this cable. So once it's all connected, it looks rather nice together. It does work on an Android tablet. If you're using, if you have an older iPhone and you have Lightning, you can just get a little Lightning to USB-C adapter. I'll put a link in the description below for this. And then this allowed me to plug it directly into my iPhone if I can, of course, line up the plug. So that's pretty painless there. And then I also plugged this into my X-Duo XB2 balanced Bluetooth DAC. Worked great. Use it on my niche Pietas Maximus, which was a little bit extreme for an IEM like this, but for rock, man, that sounded great too. So these scale pretty well, but again, 160, you're getting comfort, great tuning and tonality out of the box. You get an awesome DAC, which you could probably use on several other things. This DAC has no software or EQ to worry about. You just plug it in and go. Unfortunately, it does not work on PlayStation 5, but you can still plug your IEM directly into the controller because, again, this isn't going to change the sound quality. And you can still benefit from that and enjoy it. And, of course, this works on the Xbox controller or basically anything else. If you decide you want to purchase this, I will have a link in the description below to take you to the Meze Audio website. Otherwise, purchase it however you like. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you found the content helpful. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.